Welcome to Creativity Boost Podcast. Today, I brought on the show a man that's going to unravel the mysteries behind going from broke to billions. I brought on the show Terry Rich, and we're going to be discussing what I've just talked about, from broke to billions. Everybody who has gone through that journey of going from idea to increased income, going from concept to cash flow, have a thing or two to say, has a story to share, has an experience to communicate that can inspire someone else out there. And that's why I brought Terry on this episode of Creativity Boost Podcast. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation, because I bet you it's going to be worth your while. Hi, Terry. Do you want to introduce yourself to us as we begin?
Sure. I'm Terry Rich. And my history, people kind of say, how did you get to where you're at? I started out on the farm, and I thought, as many people do, that you go into a job, you're going to be there the rest of your life. And everybody has a given moment that really changes their life. And I've had about four. Started when I went to college. I was going to be a math major, be a math teacher. And someone said, hey, you can go over here and talk and make a living. So I started in radio and television. And that probably was a big life changer, because most of my buddies went into broadcast television, being a TV director or producer, and the jobs were all taken by the time I got started. So I went into cable television and had the opportunity to go into one of the most entrepreneurial companies. I mean, right out of the chute, I went in, and it was so much fun. Everything we touched seemed to turn to gold. I worked with folks like Ted Turner and others who started CNN and ESPN and HBO and all these different. And it really was a way to learn that you can, in creativity, that you always wanted to have that next idea on the burner. You always want to look for change, because things change so quickly in today's world. The other thing I learned was the idea that happiness happens on the way to success. Everybody thinks, hey, if I get this project done, or I accomplish this, I get into this company, I'm going to be good. But when you get there, it's kind of like cocaine. Success is like cocaine. Once you've felt success, you want to have it again. And so I tried all these different things. And the next thing I learned as a life experience was that failure is the first step to success. I had my first failure right out of the chute. I was doing on-camera television, and I got on, and I looked down at the TV, and I realized my shaver, I didn't have this 5 o'clock shadow. So I thought, I'm going to write Gillette and tell them how much I love their razor. Well, I sat down at this thing we call the typewriter, sent off a letter, and waited. It took 2 weeks, and it came back just 2 weeks on the button. And during that time, I really dreamt about what would it be like to be on national television, thinking, would that be a next step in life? I got the letter back in 2 weeks and said, Dear Mr. Rich, you have great satisfaction with your razor. Unfortunately, you wrote the wrong company. I failed. But you know what? It gave me the inspiration to, down the road, actually try to get on national television. I got on a program called Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. And what I did was sit down. I had a buddy who said, hey, we're going to have a centennial in our little town of 50 people, and we want you to help us with publicity. So I'd never done it before, but I wrote a press release saying that we'd like to adopt somebody. I went in and I cranked out, and I hit the wrong button and cranked out 44 letters to the press. You know what? 43 of the 44 letters failed. But the one letter that made it, I got a call and said, this is so-and-so. His name was Bruce Canner from United Press International. And Bruce said, you know what? We like this. We want to put it on the national wires. Can I get a quote? I didn't know what UPI was. Gave him a quote. Lo and behold, half hour later, I get a call from a talent coordinator from The Tonight Show. And they talked about coming out and putting us on The Tonight Show with something called a satellite uplink. Well, in Iowa, we've never had that before. And they came out, but they couldn't figure out the technology, so we got to go beyond, and we're in front of 20 million people. Because I failed 43 of the 44 times, it took 44 contacts to get the one success. But the story really doesn't end there, because by being on and learning about a satellite uplink, it was fun to be in front of 20 million people, be on The Tonight Show. But the really story was, I was working for this cable television company, and we were showing HBO for free. So you turn on your TV and say, hey, Marge, they're showing free HBO. And at the end of the movie, I'd pop on and say, hey, if you like HBO, give us a call right now. But I'd have to do that by going from town to town and doing these free previews. Well, I thought, Tonight Show, they talked about doing a satellite uplink. It had never been done out of our state. What if we could do that? And so I started calling up the ladder at HBO and said, hey, could we do it? And I got this, no, man, I don't think it works, but you're a good client. I'll give it to this person. And ultimately, I got to the VP of technology who said, yeah, we'll send out a satellite uplink. So we did a satellite uplink, first time ever done from our state, and we sold $15 million worth of product that weekend. All because I had failed before, but it didn't bother me because we just kept trying and we hit the right spot, and we're into cable television. Well, cable television was fun till I hit 40, and at 40, we had someone come in and buy the company. And then what do? But I'd made all the money that I wanted to. I'd done all the traveling. So I started my own company. I used that same idea, that because we failed and we talked satellite uplink, to start doing it for all the other companies. And we started doing business with HBO, the Disney Channel, all these different channels. And it made more money than I ever thought. So at age 50, midlife crisis, I decided, you know what, I've made the money, I've had the fun, I want to be with my family. And I got a call from the lead of our state who said, hey, they're going to close our zoo. Would you like to run a zoo? Well, I grew up on a farm raising cattle. Can't be any different than running a zoo. So I ran a zoo that was losing almost $600,000 US dollars a year. They were going to close it, and we got to turn it around. And with all sorts of fun creativity ideas that I'd learned each step of my life, it was a big change to give back to the community and run the zoo. And then ultimately ran a lottery because I got a call then from the current governor at that point. And they said, would you run the lottery? It was, the zoo was what, $3.5 million budget, a $350 million budget. And I ran the lottery, and it was basic blocking and tackling. Same creativity that you've been talking about of how do we change it. And lo and behold, halfway through, I learned that someone was creating fraud within the lottery, and quickly I had to get serious and solve the largest lottery in U.S. history. So it's been a fun life. It's been a great one. But at each step of the way, you learn ways to be more creative and how to handle it when you have that failure.
Wow, what an amazing story. I really, really love how you gave us a chronology of your journey and how you've got to where you are now. Made lots of money in the journey. But what was the key turning point for you? What would you say was the key turning point for you when you were at the lowest moment in your life, at least the first time? And, how did you take advantage of that opportunity in your future journeys up until this point that has brought you the kind of success you've experienced so far?
I could still be on the farm, but I think one of the key elements is when I was young, I would have all sorts of, they called it orneriness when I was young, but then they started calling it creativity. And I realized from my dad, who always said, if I'd say, hey, let's do something, and I knew it was crazy, but it would save me some time. And he'd say, well, why don't you try it? So the encouragement that he had to try new things and to look for new things, really good. And in college, I had a professor who taught me that happiness happens on the way to success. But better yet, it's better to have tried and failed than to succeed at doing nothing, because so many people are creative. You have $1 million idea, but until you take the step to do it, you're going to fail. So I had a couple things I wanted to do, and I tried and I failed. And I quit. And then I quickly learned that I needed to revamp. We sent 3 people to the moon in the United States. And when they went up, project managers in any company, you know the date, you know how much money you have. Okay, here's what we're going to do now. If they'd have done that with going to the moon, they would have failed, because they would have said, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We've planned it. Here we go. Blast off. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. But no, they failed over 90% of the time. They were course correcting the entire mission because they weren't going to let it fail, even though it was going the wrong way. They figured out how to get it back. So it's so important to keep looking and to keep trying when you look at that. And I had those failures in my life, but I took those and I kept those ideas to figure out how to improve upon that and make it even better.
So from what you've said, that you're creative does not mean you will not experience some temporary setbacks, as I would like to call it. Some people call it failure, but I call it temporary setbacks that gives you the opportunity to try more intelligently or more creatively. So let's talk about this creativity subject, because the world is looking for creativity. According to the World Economic Forum report, for the past 5 to 10 years now, they have said that the top 3 skills that are being sought for across industries and across geographies is creativity, complex problem solving, and critical thinking skills. So the world is in need of creativity. So what do you think creativity is all about?
Well, let's give an example. I went to, in San Francisco, they have a thing called Napa Valley, drinking wine. And I thought that you went in and the guys went around back that made the wine and just got the grapes in their own property and they made it. No, they take a bushel basket and they go out and pick out different grapes from all of the different areas, because in different areas, the weather might be different, the soil might be different. They take that and they put it all together to get the one grape that works. You don't just find one grape and say you're going to have success. So I'm big into saying, let's get 100 ideas, no judgment. Let's put it all together. Create new ideas that you think would work. Don't let anybody say, no, that's not going to work. I call them no-mans. You want all those ideas together. That's step 1, the creativity. Step 2 is to take those ideas and then you bring everybody together, all the different people that, the legal side, the accounting side, everybody feeds in, and it'll raise to the top 2 or 3 ideas. Now you have your entire staff working together on that one idea that should work, and you have a backup. So you're daring to dream first, 100 ideas, then you're daring to act. Most people are afraid to do the acting part of it, which really creates a problem. So the other thing, we all brainstorm with our group. The other thing, it took me a long time to learn this, is the idea of something I call COT. When I worked for the lottery, state government, I went in, of course, I'm barreling with all these different ideas. Let's paint the wall yellow. Let's have animals on the ticket, whatever. And the second weekend, the management staff just melted down. And I said, well, what's going on? They said, we can't do all of this. And I said, what do you mean? You're giving us all these ideas. We can't do it. And I realized that just like the king of England might say, oh, poop, and everybody heads for the bathroom, they listen to the bosses. They want to please their boss. So I said, no, those are just ideas. So we came up with an idea. How do you tell employees something that is an idea to get them spurred on to add to that idea versus this is an ultimatum? So when we do memos to each other in the CC area or the memo area, you'd put either, action required. That means, you got to do it. And I did that on maybe 1 or 2% of my emails. The next one was FYI, for your information. You should read it sometime. Might be good for you for the deal. But the third one was COT, which stood for consider or throw away. And the rules for that, when you use this little technique, is that if you get something that's COT, or if you're talking to someone, you say COT, no action is required. Just you can throw it away if you're busy. All I'm trying to do is get that idea off my chest, because we're trying to get that bushel basket of 100 ideas from everybody to do that. And of course, send me your ideas as you're doing that. Now, what we found was that all of a sudden they sent that on down to theirs, and the person in the front office, who was afraid, maybe they had an idea and they put it in the suggestion box, but it sat there for 3 weeks and no one ever acted on it. And they'd be in the break room going, management never listens to me. Well, now they have a way to send it. They know they're not going to get a reply. No action is required, but they're going to get me to at least say, hey, wow, here's another idea that might really be good. And the creativity in the whole office really worked. Because remember, we're trying to get the big bushel basket and then take those 100 ideas, and in a meeting once a month, once every quarter, you put everything and everybody gets to vote on what they think is best. And now you've got the number one solution, the number one new idea at the top that everybody has already endorsed.
Okay. Now, you told me in your story, chronology, that you actually started a company. So I want you to help us unpack that journey in more detail with some, tips that we can actually glean from your experience. How did you make a company that you started? How did you make it succeed? And what were the key indicators that helped you succeed? Was it that you had saved lots of money and that helped you start your company? There's lots of people who they don't know how to start. They don't know if to start. They don't know why to start. There are many people who are doing well in their careers right now. Deep down within them, they know that they can do more, they can be more, but they don't know how, why, where, when to push out their brain children for the world to experience. and you successfully went through that path, that professional path, and then you broke out and you started your own company. You went all in and you went all out, and then you went back into another path of entrepreneurship. That, in my own estimation, is creativity at best, right? So
Sure.
how did you navigate all of those? How did you navigate the murky waters of entrepreneurship just coming out of the professional path?
Looking back, if I were to do it over again, coming out of college thinking, okay, I'm ready to start my company, I've got some sort of idea. My advice to most is, as you're coming out of college or in your first, is to go to get a job somewhere in a successful company already. McDonald's is successful. So there's companies around, or if you're an engineer and you want to start at a company you know is successful, go learn the trade, learn what they have and what they have to do. Keep your idea for a second, because you need to learn about legal, marketing, business, all the business sense. You'll see that within that company. And as you make money, put money aside, because you don't want to start a company. Number one rule is you got to have enough money to last 6 months to a year. If you start out a company and a month later you've run out of money, you quit, you'll never feel like you can be successful. So go to a company, learn the trades, learn the money, and then start your company on the side at night or on the weekends. And you'll be able to build up until you've got enough cash flow that you can say the heck with the first company, and you can work it. Then, as you become more and more successful, this is one that really hit me. When I came out of Heritage, I had the money to start the cash flow. And then when I started my next company, which was doing these free previews, and then I also started I bought a radio station, bought and built a radio station, started new cable programming with all that. I had about 4 or 5 companies going at once. I took a portion of the proceeds. Never, ever did I want to risk my house, my home, and everything and getting a loan. I took a portion of the proceeds to start the company so that if I failed, didn't matter. Just like if you gamble, you go in, you take $100. You don't play $100, you lose it, so you reach in your pocket or head for the ATM to get more money. Only play when you're starting a company with what you can lose. And if you lose it, you can say, look what I learned in all of this. So now you take that money and you build it up. So anytime I made money and I wanted to start something, I could have the craziest ideas to start something new. Here's the other thing that the big companies do that are really successful. That's R&D. They call it research and development. Well, I call it entrepreneurship. So they always have 2 or 3 things on the shelf that if something is happening with a company, say you're starting a banana ice cream store, 100 people about in your research would make it work. When you get to the 100, how do you grow? Well, you can't grow unless you create new things to build upon what you're already doing. You hear too many people say, well, it's working. Why do I want to change? Why do we want to change what we're doing? You want to add to it so that you continue that growth. And so starting your company with monies that you know you can lose, and then as soon as you're starting to make some money, think about what that next idea is. Because if you were a taxi cab driver in New York City, whoever thought that Uber would come along? You thought taxis are going to be needed all our life. That's not the case. You always have to grow. It's going to level off, and you want to be creating to be able to grow more. And then utilize that money, that little extra money, to do it. Big companies do it. Why shouldn't small?
Amazing. So what about the scenario where someone will say, hey, I need $50,000 or $100,000 or $500,000 to start this idea that I have or to bring it to life, but I don't have any money. I'm just living on a tiny shoestring. I'm living from paycheck to paycheck, or I don't even have a paycheck. What do you think? Should that person, is that justification to bury?
There's a guy named Dave Ramsey that really talks about, taking loans and working loans. And some of the best advice my boss or my lawyer gave me that kind of goes along with Dave is anytime you add a partner, you go find somebody who's doing angel investing. There's a lot of companies that have people who want to invest in new ideas. Anytime you have partners, you have people who are telling you what to do. Now, I like ideas of having partners, but I would rather have the loan by myself or have accumulated enough money to start the company by myself and then do investors who want to be on the board or not paid investors that will take money once the company makes. You give them some money at the end if the company makes money, so that you find people who are the the legal or the accounting or sales who do things that you don't do. Most entrepreneurs are awful business owners because they have really good expertise in the product that they're developing, but they don't have it in the general business side of what they're doing. So I think the more money you can start your company with, the less people that are putting their finger, because if somebody's going to give you $50,000, $100,000, you bet that they will be right there over your shoulder trying to tell you how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's talk about your journey from broke to billions, how you actually grew. I heard you gave away $1 billion, and I know there's a story to that. So do you want to share and just also along the way give us some tips on how anyone can go from idea to income, from concept to cash flow? It doesn't have to be that jump. I know that someone may be listening and all they need is just to get to 10K months, all they need just to get to 50K months, 100K months. So I just want you to articulate your story to that $1 billion mark and share those tips for those people who are at different levels of their journey.
Well, first of all, no matter what you do, if you're working in a company, you're working somebody else trying to get your stock options going, raise your hand. If the toilet's dirty and the janitor's gone and the boss says, hey, we need somebody to volunteer, be the first to volunteer. I think the second is, in building your wealth and looking at it, I raised my hand with the zoo. I'd never run a zoo, but they knew that I'd had success in others. And companies today, people bounce around a lot more than normal. They don't go to one company and you stay there the rest of your life because you think there's advancement, because companies like to hire people with new expertise. So if you can make success, you really want to have success in the company you're in. If you're going to make big dollars, you probably have to bounce around to 2 or 3 to make that next big financial jump. And then you try to get all the stock and stock options in any company you believe in that you can. Money is never made in the salary. It's made in the equity and being able to own. And when you can start your own company and build it, then you do it. The other key point, which is you always want to remember this one, is somebody always has a bigger boat. No matter how much money I make, no matter what I do, there's always an Elon Musk or somebody else that's really, really big that why can't I do that? And you can, Ted Turner made a lot of money, and I always thought if he could do it, why can't I? Because he's crazy and does some awfully weird, dumb things. He's had failures. But you've got to try to figure out ways to enjoy what you have, because it isn't just cash that makes you happy. It's the self-worth of what you're doing that makes you happy. Now, here's how I gave away my $1 billion. Is that I worked for the lottery. I went to the lottery, and I gave away $1 billion in prizes over the time I served that.
Wow!
Now, I made more money than I ever thought I would ever make when I was 40, and then made a whole bunch more when I had my own companies. But if you look at that dollar amount of how do I continue to do it, I got to remember with kids, with family, with just taking. I missed it. Everybody misses. Everybody will tell you. I'm in a group that are all CEOs, head of billion-dollar insurance companies, and when we get up and talk about the business and our families, almost everybody has a failure, and it's usually Johnny's in Yale, Susie to Harvard, and Billy, we have no idea what that kid's going to do. So everybody has their own little problems. So you've got to figure out things that make you feel happy and make you feel self-worth. Yeah. One more story on that, if I can. A guy named Damon John, who is the black guy on Shark Tank. Yeah. You know what? I was doing a deal with him a few weeks ago, and I was talking to him, and he was writing things down on a little pad of paper. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I've got 5 things every night I write down and I evaluate, and then the next morning I revise it." I said, "You get that many $1 million ideas?" He said, no. He says, "I found in success, I need to do some things for myself." And I'm thinking, well, that's kind of selfish. And so he says, "No, I wake up, I put things down. I want to have pancakes tomorrow. I haven't had pancakes. I do something for myself because it puts me in the right frame of mind that when I go out to help other people, I'm happy." Often people wake, even if it's just say, make my bed. I'm going to make my bed this morning. I did it. I accomplished it. That puts you in a frame of mind that I can accomplish anything and I can help others. So I think those are some great tips to understand and to figure out what makes you happy when it's all said and done, because you've got to find that. Now, I've never been able to relax. I'd like to find a way to to relax, because if I drive to the store and I did it in 3 minutes, I want to do it in 2 minutes and 50 seconds the next time. So I think that's some advice that I would give people starting to find something that makes you happy and gets you a peace of mind about self-worth.
I've met a lot of people who try to turn their passion to profit, and because of that, they're absorbed in themselves and not in what people want. So they are trying to make people want what they want. So what do you have to say about people like that? So they found what makes them happy, but it doesn't make other people happy, so they can't monetize that. What can you say about that?
I think back to success is like cocaine. Once you get into it and you just realize how much fun it is to create something, or even in a company to do something that makes it successful. But you've got to think about ethics. When we went through this largest lottery fraud in U.S. history. I had to lead the team, and I had a lot of people tell me, don't do it, you're hurting our reputation. But I like to sleep at night. So there are different things that turn everybody on and what they enjoy doing. It's easy to say don't do it, don't overwork, don't I haven't talked to anybody who has said that I'm so happy I never talked to my kids and I worked all the time. Everybody would like to have spent more time, but you have that delicate balance in doing it all, and there is no easy answer except what's in your heart. It may be a religious decision, it may be a personal or a family decision, but having that is important. But I don't know many real successful people that don't have that drive all the time, and it's tough to give that up.
Great. I'm aware that you authored several books, not just a book. Can you talk us through that process? What inspired you to become an author, despite all of the wonderful things you experienced in life and achieved in your journey?
Sure.
What inspired your journey into writing a book?
Here's the real secret while you and I are talking. It's easy to say that I've been successful and I've had all of this, but when you peel back the covers to any individual, everybody has something that hasn't quite worked, or it isn't there, but they don't get recognized for that. They get recognized for the success. So I'm always positively looking for something positive. And when I retired from the lottery, I had begun, we had these conferences, and doing public speaking, the people we were hiring were getting $40,000, $50,000 a speech. And I thought, man, this would be a great retirement gig. So I started doing speeches. Now, I'm not making that much money. I started off making $500, $1,000. And then as I went through that journey, I got an agent, and the agent said, I can get you another $3,000 or $4,000 a speech if you've got a book. I've never written a book. I'm not that big a reader in writing. So I hired someone to help me ghostwrite a book. So I wrote a book on creativity, the things we're talking about.
Wow.
And then when we had the lottery fraud, I wrote one on that. And all of a sudden, I'm getting more, and they're paying me, flying me over first class to Europe to speak for 1 hour. And then I've taken it's the greatest retirement gig in the world. Then I take 3 or 4 days and look around Germany or wherever as I do it. But I get a book when I want to, and I don't have to write a report afterwards. I just go in and speak for an hour and come out, and everybody smiles, hand me the check, and that's good. So it's a great gig, but it took about 10 years to really build up to where I'm at now. And I'm even at the point now where I enjoy doing these and meeting great folks like you. Is almost as fun. I'm not as worried about the money. It's just keeping my mind engaged, and that I think is a lesson from the beginning of looking for ways. And it's back to the big bushel basket. No matter what you and I talk about today, I've got 2 or 3 ideas, and you saw how I'm bouncing all over the place answering your questions, because I like filling that bushel basket. I hope there's one nugget, there's one grape in there that someone picks up on today, because that's what I try to do in life. Is I'm always looking. I love doing new things to learn what's going on.
So what can you say is fundamental to achieving success in life? I know you said some things about doing things that makes you happy, because at the end of the day, it's not all about the money and the cash flow. So what can you say is your definition of success?
I think having a project and completing it that it was successful is the definition of success. But success isn't the success comes in getting to the success. Happiness happens on the way to success. I think I mentioned that a little earlier, that I'm always looking for how to tweak, how to make something a little bit better. But when I've made it better, I'm done, and okay, now I'm on to the next one. In fact, when we get done here, if you want, I'll give you $1 million idea I know will work today that I haven't got done, and I'll just give it. And if somebody wants to help me get this thing done, we'll do it. But I think the happiness is in you. Like Damon John said, is doing things that you enjoy. It's not a selfish thing to have the pancakes in the morning when you're on a diet once in a while. Or for me, my very first huge project with HBO, I stopped by McDonald's, had 2 hash browns, cinnamon roll, and a medium Diet Coke because I was early. And I got this huge $1 million project in 5 minutes. And so every time I do a major speech, every time I do something big that I want to have good luck, guess what I have? I head to McDonald's and have that same breakfast. Not that I'm superstitious, but it puts me in the frame of mind, just like Damon John, to be able to make it. Now, it's added a few pounds, but and my wife would laugh at me to say, why are you doing that? But it's the frame of mind you have that makes you happy. And I love walking in, meeting new people, doing things like what we're doing today, just to meet new people and see the smiles when I'm talking or doing a presentation when it's all over.
Wow. And what you just said just reminded me of a story I heard about Warren Buffett, who he says that he drinks Coke, he eats burger whenever he wants, however he wants, that he just wants to enjoy his life. Yeah. I know
we all make choices. It's a personal choice of what you want. If you want to do, you're going to die 10 years later. I think the people are a lot happier than I am. Right? I see some folks who are mentally challenged, who have to live with their parents all their life, and they seem happier than a lot of people ever will be, because they're looking for fun things in life. Little things make it happy. But it's the dilemma that we all have, that we see people with more money, with a bigger boat, bigger car, whatever, and we always have that drive in what we're doing and making it to that. So if someone finds that answer, you and I will make a lot of $1 million.
Yeah. So what would you say is the secret to creating wealth? Being someone that has created wealth yourself?
Most people who are very wealthy over the years made it in real estate, putting a little bit of money in, getting leverage, buying the next and renting out a house or building and setting up a commercial building. I think the step really is making sure you have good people around you that have the expertise that I don't. My degree is a BS in speech. My degree isn't a PhD or an MBA from Harvard or anything. Yet I've had more success in some ways than they have. But I think you just have to go after it and surround yourself with good people. And just like I was encouraged by my dad, who say, go ahead and try it. Encourage people within your organization to try new things and make sure that you reward failures in some ways, but calculated failures, which means that they've thought through it, they've talked through it, and they've shown people why it should work, rather than just willy-nilly go into it without talking to folks on how to do it.
Interesting. Now, let's talk about your time in the farm, because when I learned that you had a humble background, I was really, really inspired and fascinated to see how far you've come. So what was your thought process like? What inspired you to go all out for the kind of things that you've experienced in life today?
I think there are two paths to that. One is the creative side, which is just being encouraged and just being crazy enough. When I did something crazy, people would smile. That was encouragement. My dad saying, I said, hey, it's too cold outside. I want to run a pipe down to the barn to feed my sheep so I don't have to go outside, and I'll just dump the milk in the house. And he looked at me and laughed and said, well, why don't you call your Uncle Short, who was a plumber, and see what he thinks. And, then they got a good giggle out of it. But when they got a giggle, I could see the smile, and it was encouragement. And when I failed, they didn't get mad at me. They just said, hey, have you thought about this? So I think that's one side. The other side was he went through the Depression. And on the farm, we didn't have much money, and he went to service, went to World War II, and came back, didn't have money to buy a farm. So his grandpa on my mom's side, or my grandpa on my mom's side, lent him some money to get started on a small farm. And he worked it hard, but he never would ever, he said, if you can't buy it, don't buy it. So we never had the fanciest cars. We never had the fanciest tractors and all the things that go along with that. And I haven't had debt since I was 30, when we cashed out at Heritage. And since I've been 38, I'm not going to borrow money to buy anything if I can't afford it. And I think that was the other lesson I learned, those two lessons.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much. Do you have like anything to say? I think a mistake.
I've got the $1 million idea. You want that one?
Yeah. I want that one. Go ahead. Go for it.
Okay. $1 million idea. Now, I like this idea. So when we had Powerball and Mega Millions, we merged the games together in the United States. And when we did that, they asked me to do some marketing for Mega Millions. How can we do to promote it in the Powerball states? So I'm driving home and I look up and I see the moon, which is like a crescent, with a little fingernail and then a star on one side. Oh my God, let's get a spotlight or a laser and let's put the jackpot on the moon. No one owns a moon yet. So I called to the universities and they hung up on me. They thought I was really kind of kooky. And I got enough people that I got an astrophysicist and he said, well, it's going to dissipate when you go through the atmosphere. You need to go out and it's got to be broadcast out past our atmosphere. Oh my God, all we got to do now is just get a hold of Elon Musk and get a laser out on one of his satellites, and we could own the moon.
Wow, that's funny.
Yeah, but it can be done.
Yeah.
How about that? Anyway, that's the idea in life. But that's the craziness of it. But somebody will figure something like that out every day. Everybody has $1 million idea, but until we act on it, it'll never get done.
Amazing. And part of the reason why I do this is because I've come to discover that there are millions of people, even billions of people, who are heading to the grave in droves with their $1 billion ideas sitting on their heads. And I believe that by curating these conversations, we can jumpstart the creative side of these people and help them go from concept to cash flow, inspire them, motivate them, encourage them where they need encouragement, and just let them know that, hey, you're not alone in this journey, and there are people who have actually been through what you're going through and have succeeded. And so it's such a pleasure to have you on the show, Terry. I think that this is a great place to call it. I want to thank you for coming on and sharing all those wonderful insights with such a great sense of humor. It's a pleasure to have you. Do you have any final words that you'd like to say before we draw the curtain?
Nope, I guess just my website, some people often ask that, is terryspeaks.com, Terry, terryspeaks.com. And if somebody's looking for a keynote for a conference or whatever, I love traveling and I love saying hi, but I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome. Great. So you heard it from him, terryspeaks.com. I'm going to drop the links on the show notes, so do well to check it out and tell someone about this conversation, tell someone about this episode, drop a comment and share on social media or wherever platform you're listening to this, and you'll be glad you did. I'm going to see you on my next episode. Until then, have a good one and bye-bye.